Yeah. I mean the name.
How's everyone tonight? Guys, enjoy the fun. Like ours. Really nice fun. Yep, not gonna be like that tomorrow. Not gonna be like that tomorrow. So we are at interns this week, and so I want to remind you to continue working on your projects, and I'm gonna slate a little bit of time after class so you can have a group discussion with your table mates on your projects. Given that this is midterms, I have received quite a bit of emails, and I've gone through the Google Drives and reviewed some of your updates and your work, and I think some of it's great, others need some work. If you still have some questions, contacts that you need from me, suggestions on different alternatives, planning and such for your project, please send it my way. After this week, your next phase of the project is really to come up with some solutions. So think about some solutions that you want to present and what will be implementable, what's feasible, what's reasonable, and if the sky's the limit, what else would you do? So in that regard, I wanted to read one. You have a question?
I did.
Sort of like a hand.
So,
Sorry.
Earlier in the term, we had observed that there was a problem with receiving emails from you.
Yes.
I'm wondering, that I emailed you yesterday, and I'm wondering, not that like urging you, like, did you get back to me?
I
But,
just got back.
did you really?
Yes, I did.
Did it work?
It works. What I realized is I think either my outgoing message or some of you are not able to receive my emails regarding because of size and capacity. That's happened on other projects also. So I'll let you know that if you email me individually, I will return the email, but I stopped doing mass email just because some of you were not getting it, and then I was getting started yet, and I take a look at the emails. But then I also figured there's a Google Drive and there's a Slack channel that we can also communicate. Yeah. So yes, you did get an email from me, so thank goodness I had time. What else is on the docket? Field trip on the 11th. We're still on for a streetcar maintenance facility. So I think most of you are all signed up, except maybe one or two. So we're ready to go on that. I don't plan. I can send like just kind of a quick reminder next week to Dan Bauer. He'll be leading our streetcar guy. He'll be leading the tours.
I think 17 or 18 of you have signed up. So we are thinking that that's the right. That's
yeah,
the
17 or 18.
group.
And the other thing that I was suggesting was a group lunch afterwards. I mean, I know the area, but not very well. So if you want to kind of like send me some restaurant recommendations of what you would like, please send them my way so we could figure out a place so we can just chill out afterwards. I said, do we get the address? You send the address.
I put the address in the survey, so I can. So yeah, I kind of.
We'll put the address. We'll send you the address. We'll send you an email with the address and time, and making sure that you wear closed-toe shoes. That's of utmost importance.
Will there be a problem if we have like traffic managers? With like a bike bag with us, or the policy carry?
Oh, I think it should be fine. I think it should be fine.
Yeah, and we can do that this week.
Yes.
We can send that update this week.
Yeah, I'll send you update this week. Any other questions before we start off this week? Yes, no, we have a really rich evening tonight. This is the second time I brought up the subject of the Interstate Bridge project. Last year we had our very own director, Melissa Williams, came last year when she was a consultant at OTAC, talking about community engagement for the Interstate Bridge project. So this year, tonight, I'm bringing back the topic because it's very important to the region and very important to most of our transportation folks who work in the industry. I think most of us at some point will span this project. This is a project that started my career some years ago when I was a consultant fresh out of college, and I did this project. I did some traffic analysis for something that was called the I-5 trade corridor. So it was a precursor to what was called the infamous Columbia River Crossing. I never worked on it as a Columbia River Crossing project. And then many years later, I get a phone call from my colleagues saying, this project is coming back up. It's now Interstate Bridge project. Would you like to come on as a consultant? So I am on this project once again, springing from my beginning of career. I think I'm going to retire with this. It's been like 40 years in the making, who knows? But it is now, as you all know, the Interstate Bridge program. There's so many intricacies with this project. We've got two of our esteemed TSB staff who have been on this project for a good long while, but also in different arenas. One is the government affairs component, the other is capital project manager from the city of Portland. So I want to give you an opportunity to hear from our guest speakers. We're going to start the evening a little early. I'm not sure in terms of how you want to have a full questions, hold them at the end, or as you work on as you do your presentations. I'm going to let them do their own introductions because they have quite a bit of history with this course as well as the project. But first is Patrick Sweeney from Capital's Project Manager, PBOT, in the back. And Aaron Diaz, our government relations person from Established Strategies. So I think you've got your presentation. So I'm not sure who's going first or who's going last, but okay.
Am I going first or we want to vote? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Hello, everybody. Good to see you. I am Aaron Diaz. I work for Established Strategies. And I am government relations lead for the Interstate Bridge projects. It was funny what Thuy was saying about the project. We were just having a baby shower today up at the bridge project. And the joke was there were so many people who had worked on the project in previous iterations that we have a whole first wave of babies who are now getting old enough to be able to drive across the current bridge. And we're hoping this next wave of babies will actually be able to drive across a new bridge or ride the light rail or ride. So I started my career working in the Oregon legislature and then went to DC to work for Congressman Peter Fazio from Southwest Oregon, my hometown representative, and then ended up working for TriMet for 15 years, which was not an unexpected place for me to land because I didn't know anything about transportation at the time or transit, but I did know a little bit about government relations, and so I did government relations for TriMet, helped get funding for the Orange Line, it goes to Milwaukee. We got the first piece of funding for that. Also worked, I think my biggest or my proudest moment in my career is the House Bill 2017 from the 2017 legislative session created Oregon's first dedicated investment in transit in state history. And it was a statewide investment, and it created a continuous revenue source for transit all across the state, not just for TriMet, but for rural areas that have use. So then a friend of mine who used to work at TriMet lured me away from TriMet to go work on a $6 billion bridge project. So I like infrastructure, obviously. I like transit. I was excited about the idea of getting light rail and biking ahead. I'm a bike cyclist. I've ridden at the Interstate Bridge project a number of times. It's terrifying. And I like infrastructure, and I'm familiar with the process. So that's a little bit about me. I've been leading the government relations part of the project, which is when you have a project of this scope, $6 billion-ish 2 departments of transportation, 2 governors. We have cities on both sides of the river. We have 2 transit entities. We have people all over both sides of Washington and Oregon who really care about this. We have folks who want to move freight. We have ADA issues with the bridge. It's really challenging to get across the Columbia walking or biking. You can't do it. You can't do it in a mobility device. I think it's possible. And so, so the project kicked off. I think it's the first iteration I'm not going to talk about because that's old. And this iteration kicked off in 2019, I think it was, with the governors basically saying it's time to revisit the Columbia River crossing. They got to basically if you like, football metaphors, it got to like the 90, whatever, it would be about 1 yard line and couldn't quite get across the finish line. That's not a football reference, but and so there was a lot of, I think, frustration, PTSD, all around the region from a process that was very painful. And so they decided it's time to kick it off and start rethinking what did we do right last time? What did we do wrong last time? How much of the previous work could we put together, reuse, and go forward? So I think maybe if we could, can I advance it?
Yes.
Aaron, maybe I'll just say a few words.
Yes, that's why I invited you up here, Patrick.
So if you can sit closer to here, this is where the recording is happening.
Oh, gotcha,
Can you
gotcha.
go back one slide, so still the left percent?
Yeah.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Patrick Sweeney. I'm a capital project manager with PBOT. Happy to be here, all of you. I was one of you. I was back in 2002. I was the land use transportation chair of the Vermont Wilshire Neighbor Association. So I heard about this class. I only been in Portland for a couple of years. I got it like a sponge. I got to soak it up. So I went and took this class. It was awesome. I learned so much. And I was a consultant. I'm a landscape architect by background, but my career has taken me towards urban design, main streets, transit systems to big bridges, and like Aaron, I'm into like the big infrastructure projects now. So, but early in the 2000s, I took this class, and it really helped me get a grip on like, that's not only like why Portland moves the way it does, but also the policy imperatives that help shape, like, you know, the bike lanes or the shared paths that we all might ride on, or the sidewalks, or even getting to the MAX station, or getting to the bus, or, you know, driving where we need to go. It's all part of the city's master plan about how, you know, we all want to get to where we want to go. We all want to try to get people out of doing single occupant vehicle trips, reduce car use, reduce vehicle miles traveled. So anyway, so I learned about all that, and like Aaron, I was with the city. So I've been with the city 2 times on my second journey. So I was with the city of Portland and PBOT from 2007 to 2011. And when I was there, I worked on Columbia River Crossing. And so coming from a transportation planning or design background, my job was like, so just imagine, it's a massive footprint. Like a big bridge, an interchange, more bridges, another interchange, it's a huge footprint. So my job is to like manage the footprint on the city. So that touches everything, every utility, every sidewalk connection, road connection, everything. So my job is to work with all the bureaus, that everyone's assets, and get it all to work and get it all to sing all from the same function. So that was back then with Columbia River Crossing. That didn't work. Fast forward, 2019, I rejoined PBOT. This project comes back to life, and as soon as it came back, I was like, I want to work here. But I was on Burnside Bridge, And I was like, I don't want to be a bus server, I want to be Interstate. And I was like, kind of complaining a little bit, so, yeah, I got taken off Burnside Bridge and put on Interstate. So my complaining worked out. So speaking of disagrees, I'm a firm believer in that. So I'm on Interstate Bridge, and my job again is to manage the footprint of this thing, but now it's a little bit better. And I have some slides to show you that. Why is better? It's still an impactful thing, like no joke, this is a big highway project. It's rebuilding what's there. There's some nuances to that. But anyway, that's who I am, and we're gonna talk to you about the project.
So when Patrick says he has some slides, there's like 37. He gave me, I think, 6. So I can go through mine pretty quickly. And I think what I'm going to do is, there's the bridge. So the reason for building it, why are we replacing? It's terrifying. It has some safety concerns. If you've driven across the bridge recently, there are many points in which you have no time to merge with traffic that's going at full speed. The roads back in the olden times were built very narrow. And if you drive a car of any size on this one, you feel like you're about to bump into cars as you drive down it. It's not safe. The ramps come quickly and yeah, it's not safe. There's also, kind of lined up with that, there's a pretty significant, the first bridge was built in 1906. It's on wood pilings into mud, into the Columbia. It was built for horses and buggies. The second one was built after World War II. It's a little newer, but pretty much the same principle. You can barely tell them apart unless you're a nerd. The way in which the safety concerns impact the congestion, which then impacts freight movement and people movement. The other piece, because it's built in, again, the olden times, which means bomb-proof. It's overbuilt steel. It's not built to seismically to resist any sort of seismic activity of significant level. And so, which is obviously in our region, that's a pretty significant problem, being that it's a major thoroughfare up and down the West Coast. The inadequate bike and ped paths and the public transportation pieces I've already spoke about. There is not a really good way to get to Washington from Oregon on public transportation unless you get in a bus that sits in traffic along with everybody else. Or you want to take your life into your own hands riding a bike. So one of the interesting things about the project is how complicated it is and the way in which decisions have to be made. One of the things that drew me to it is I like complicated sort of Rubik's Cube political challenges. And this project is that, probably with another Rubik's Cube attached to the side of it. It's 2 different states with 2 different departments of transportation, 2 different legislatures, 2 different cultures, trying to figure out how they're going to build a bridge that goes between them that is important to both of them for very different reasons. It has 2 cities that have different cultures. City of Portland, it's sort of in, I like to say, it's sort of in a little bit in the backyard of the city of Portland. It's not in downtown, it's very far north. Vancouver, it's their front yard. They have a waterfront. If you haven't been to it recently, the bridge is the waterfront. It's beautiful. They have a downtown. The bridge is the central piece of them. So they look at the bridge very differently. We have ports on either side. So in order to, and then we have stakeholders, businesses, and people who care about infrastructure. So they decided to put together a project that has the governance structure, and I don't know if you guys care about governance structure, but it's a leader from the Department of Transportation on both sides of the river, and they hired an independent middle person to basically be sort of the main administrator. And then they created a bi-state legislative that oversees this process. So as you can see, we've got the administrator that reports to the bi-state legislative committee. We have steering groups. We have 3 of them. a community steering group, equity advisory group, and an executive steering group made up of all of the partners. And then we have all of the federal partners, and that part is even more complicated and crazy, I would say, than the two dot side, because we have the Coast Guard, we have the Federal Highways Administration, we have the Federal Transit Administration, and they all have completely different cultures and ways in which they function.
Hey, Aaron.
Yeah.
So, for everybody, for the city of Portland, the person who represents the city of Portland executive steering group is Commissioner Max. So that's who represents the city's interests in that.
Exactly. So one of the things so when we started kicking out the program again, one of the key pieces was, you don't want to start up a program and fail in the same way you failed last time, right? And so last time there were some political challenges in Washington, but the first thing that we basically looked at was what is different now than when CRC was. And one of the biggest changes in our region has been the growth of, on the Washington side, of BIPOC folks, low-income folks. A lot of folks in the changes of our neighborhoods in Portland, many low-income and BIPOC folks moved out of the traditional neighborhoods they went to. And a number of them moved to Gresham, moved to other suburbs. Many of them moved to Clark County, affordable housing opportunities, and over the last 10 years, they had the largest growth in that group population, which is significant because when you're talking about folks, working class folks moving out into a suburb area, the job base is still in the same place, or at least it was before COVID. That changes the commute patterns for demographics that we really care about. How do people get to jobs in Swan Island? How do they get to jobs at Intel? How do they get to jobs in downtown Portland when there were jobs in downtown Portland? And so that was a significant consideration. I think when you look at what the project is, and Patrick referenced this earlier about the size of the project, it's 5 miles long. It's 7 different interchanges. This is the Vancouver side, and that would be the Hayden Island and Portland intersection. The big intersection right here is Marine Drive, and we'll talk about, Patrick, I'm sure will talk about Hayden Island and Marine Drive because he loves both of those intersections. Along this though only represents the pieces. The project, the whole 1/4 itself is 5 miles long. So when we're talking about the pieces of the project, and do you want me to go into the pieces, Patrick, or would you like to? So let me talk about it, because one of okay, I'll start. Key components. We're going to build a bridge. It's going to be seismically resilient. We're going to build a bridge over. There are not just one bridge. There are a number of bridges, but the 2 key ones are. There's a bridge over the North Harbor, which connects Portland to Hayden Island, and then there's the bridge, and then there's the bridge. We're also going to be currently in both directions. You have through lanes of traffic, right? And these are just the traffic that just goes through the whole corridor. They continue. They don't end. They go all the way through. That's what we currently have. We're continuing with 3 lanes. The difference is that for safety reasons, we're considering adding auxiliary lanes, which are basically lanes that give traffic time to merge off and on. And I know you've probably seen them when you go on 217 or a number of spots around the interstate where you have time to actually look over your shoulder. There's an extra lane there that wasn't there. You get to kind of wait till you can get into it. Other folks can kind of do those weaves. Much of the program right now doesn't have adequate weave lanes at all. I mean, take a drive over there and try to get off at Hayden Island or try to get on from Hayden Island. It's shocking because you basically get like 15 feet and then you're in the main traffic. Yes.
So the previous slide mentioned about 145,000 vehicles during peak hours.
Yes.
What percentage is doing any business in Hayden Island?
That's a really great question. I have a slide on that I eliminated. Not as you, because Patrick has 37 slides now, 9. So we actually have, I'm trying to remember, I was just looking at the slide yesterday. It's like 28% of the traffic enters inside the program area and goes and exits out of the program area. I don't know if that's from the Hayden Island component, because what the difference are, so right now Hayden Island has a situation where the only way that folks on Hayden Island can get off of the island, going north or south, is using the interstate. So they use the interstate bridge like a local bridge, and without any of those, you have so many people coming on and going off. What we've heard from Hayden Island, and Patrick can really do this when he goes a little later, is we've changed it, so we're trying to pull some of that traffic off of the interstate, which is what that gray bridge right there is, just a local bridge that connects Hayden Island up to North Portland. And recognizing that many of the folks that come to Hayden Island are actually coming from Vancouver to shop at Janssen Beach and some of the other shopping facilities there. And so in order to keep the footprint on Hayden Island narrower and not just be a big sprawling footprint, which it kind of is now, we've proposed having a separate bridge to pull some of that traffic off, to allow those through lanes to get through without having so much merging on that. I don't have the exact numbers, but I can get you, I can get you that information if you reach out to that class. Yes?
What's the total increase in the width?
I'll cover it.
You got that one? Okay. Yes, it's right, so I will say something on that one. Currently, we don't have, this is a sketch of what we're studying right now. The determination as to whether or not the bridge is going to be 2 side-by-side single layer bridges, or whether or not they're going to be stacked like that, has yet to be determined. So there are a number of factors coming up over the next 6 months or so, in which we'll be kind of determining what that's going to be. So, yes.
Is there a light rail station planned along the alignment at Hayden Island?
For sure, yeah. So you see the yellow line. So there's Expo Center, which is the end of the line currently. That line will continue from Expo Center, which originally, when we worked for China, the whole reason why we built the light rail to Expo Center wasn't because we liked Expo Center. It was because we were anticipating that we were going to get to Vancouver, and then when the wheels fell off, we ended at Expo Center, and that's where it's at. So we are extending from Expo Center. There's a light rail station. You can see the light rail along I-5. That's a stop in Hayden Island. And then there are 2 stops in Vancouver. There'll be one at the waterfront right here, and then there'll be a terminus down by the library in Vancouver. Yes, you have one.
What percentage of the traffic is through commercial truck?
That's a good question. I think I got that off the top of my head. I don't remember that number, Patrick. It's like 18 to 20%. I would say is through that goes all day, because it starts outside the port. The distinction, and the reason why it's hard to answer that question, is because we've done analysis on trucks that start outside the corridor and go all the way through the corridor versus trucks that start in the corridor and go one way or the other. And so many of the truck destinations from both states are going to the Port of Vancouver and the Port of Portland. And so a lot of them will be coming, say, from the Port of Portland going up to Seattle. And so they originate in our area, which is why they have this here, which looks very complicated, but actually it helps move trucks through and cars and maybe local traffic through this. But it's a complicated answer when you're talking what goes all the way through, but I think that 15 to 18% sounds about right. Yes.
Have tolls been part of the conversation at all?
Oh, that's my favorite subject. Yes, so I didn't put a finance plan slide in here because I didn't want to kill you all with boring numbers. So the way this project, I'm going to just go really quickly into the way the project is funded. So we have $1 billion from the Washington legislature of 1.1 billion technically. The Oregon legislature just committed $1 billion. We're anticipating from the Federal Transit Administration for the light rail project about $1.2 billion. We're looking at a toll portion that is a sort of adjustable number depending on how high the toll is, you know, and then we're doing the analysis right now to determine what that is. And then we're expecting to get about $2.5 to $3 billion from the federal government from two different, technically the FTA pieces, that as well. So right now we just we're currently in the process of applying for a $1.2 billion grant from the federal government to cover this, which is due in 2 weeks. So yes. So it's a sort of a cobbling of funding. The tolling piece is integral to it, and it's currently being negotiated by both Washington and Oregon. And you can imagine the challenges of determining how that money goes, where it goes, what the numbers look like. How is it going to have low income toll components? Probably is going to, you know, what are those going to look like? That's a lot of TBD on the question right now. So yes.
I maybe already covered this. I can't remember. How much time do you anticipate this will get tied up due to like environmental impact studies or?
So currently, that's a great question. Currently, we are doing we're in the process of doing the environmental impact study. We expect there's a prescribed sort of set of steps you have to take to get through a project of this nature. And I have a slide. So as you can see on the green section up here, this is the program schedule, sort of like when we started, all the planning, permitting, and then when we start construction. We're currently kind of in this area right here, working around like this. And so when you looked at that previous slide that showed all of the different components of the project, light rail, a bridge, so forth and so on, we're evaluating those pieces right now. And at the beginning of next year, we'll have a public comment period where we'll say, here's what we've got from this. Here's what the traffic data looks like. Here's what what sort of pollution the different options do. Here's the various different benefits. Give us your opinion on it. That'll be over a period of the early next year. And then we'll go and chew on that for the rest of the year and then come up with here's what we're going to propose to do. Once that happens, then we actually kind of technically already started the permitting. So that's when we really start getting into the permitting and doing some of the pre-construction work that we can do once we've kind of convinced that we've met the criteria for the environmental pieces. So it's almost, we've been in all hands deck mode probably for the last, well, I would say since the LPA. So that's July. Yeah.
Does it work if multiplied or crossing state lines?
So a lot of it's federal requirements. So the trick you get when the state line one is a really tricky question because there are different laws that both states have on how you use revenue. For example, like a tolling can be used in Washington for things that can't be used in Oregon. And so there's a little bit of so there's lots of those negotiations. There's land use pieces. There's also and I'm not going to get into this, so don't ask questions because it's way out of my depth. There's cultural resources all along. This is a land that had 11 different native tribes that have cultural resources and interests in the access to the Columbia. And so we work with the 11 different tribes to make sure that they're involved in this process. There's a national park that borders right up against where this project goes. So the impacts on that are huge. It impacts downtown Vancouver. So they have a whole bunch of city requirements and interests. I mean, there's a reason why, I let Patrick talk about the city of Portland because it's right through the heart of downtown, right through the heart of Portland. So yeah, there's a lot of that. And then I can get into the Columbia River pieces and all the elements around how do you build a bridge across a river that is environmentally important. It's the way in which, and we had the same issue when we built the Tillicum Crossing, is to when you build, what are the fish runs like, what are the requirements around doing that with the least impact on the actual river itself. But you get too far into that and get out of my depth pretty quick. So yes.
So how do you, the replacement project,
Yes.
So how do you ensure, I'm sure it's gonna take a while, I noticed it says construction start, but there's no end. So you have a building, this big bridge, you're gonna not have the old one, I knew.
Oh, I love that question. Let me zip back to here really quick. So, yes, so the goal of this project, you know, the goal of the project is to not have the interstate be shut down for an extended period of time. An extended period of time is not very long, like, because we don't want to have, because so essentially what's going to be happening is to the west of, so generally to like, to here is what, so this is where the bridge goes. The new bridge is going to basically be built right next to it. And it's going to connect up here, it's going to connect up, and it's going to connect up, you know, down there. And so what that's going to allow to do is they're going to be able to pretty much completely build it and then just flip, you know, and then reroute the traffic. Now, does that mean it's going to be all, you know, happy and shiny? No, because there's going to be lots of construction along the whole process. That's going to probably be a little bit of a headache, but there's always going to be 3 through lanes. That's the goal. Like now, the auxiliary lanes and the merging and the what's going to look like with all of the staging for materials and everything. It's very TBD. That's why that construction timeline starts there, but it goes off into the 30. So it's a year's construction. And then after that's done, then it's a few years of removing the old bridge and removing all of the pieces and taking it all out and just completely obliterating the existence of it. And doing that in an environmentally safe way, which in river, removing things out of the river requires certain windows in which you can get in there, build the dams around them to pull out the pieces, get those giant 60-foot Douglas fir timbers that are in the mud, pulling them all out, and then close, and then eliminating the dam so that it doesn't do a whole bunch of disturbances, because this is an industrial river, and so there's all sorts of stuff. So, do you have a question?
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, what could be the ramifications of pulling those things out? What could that cause?
What could it cause? Well, you can like lava squirting out because it's so deep.
It's gonna be disturbing the earth.
It is, and yeah, so you are asking a government relations person, very technical. You got this one? Yes. I knew that's what you said.
So, really cool question, because it's first, like, it's not hard. So, what they'll do, there's the existing, like, big giant concrete pure footing. We're gonna build kind of like, you ever familiar with the term a coffer dam? A coffer dam is like a sheet pile wall that they'll put around the rain, and they'll make it watertight, and then they'll drain it, and then they'll dry out all the mud at the bottom, and then they will dig out. They'll take it down piece by piece by piece, all the way down to the mud bottom, the muck, and then they'll pull the stuff out of the muck. All the while, this big curtain ring keeps it dry inside. And then once they pull up all the muck, if they will, have to do environmental remediation when they pull up poisonous muck, because it's been an industrial river. So they have to like take that stuff out, put it on a barge, take it to Arlington, where all that stuff goes. And then they cap the holes in the bottom of the river, so it doesn't impact endangered species. And then, so once that's all done, then they can remove that curtain wall, and then the water flows.
You gotta do that like 100 times? Like how many times?
So there are 9 pier sets for the existing bridges, and then there'll be 7 pier sets for the proposed, because the new ones are a bit bigger and the spans are a little bit longer. So yeah, it's a big project. Sweeney, I want to keep track of time, because we're answering a lot of questions.
Yeah, that's.
I've got 137.
No, the questions are great, so I do appreciate them.
Yeah, there's questions, but yeah, that's.
Okay, I'm gonna skip this one's just basically telling you what it is we're gonna be studying. Should I skip this one? Yeah, I mean, well, let's go through it pretty quickly. So, bike and ped, light rail, stations and potential parking rides, on the Vancouver side, replacing bridges at across the Columbia and North Harbor, modifying the 7 interchanges that are along this corridor. You can imagine that's a task. And then determining how to do an auxiliary lane through these areas with very restricted corridors of, built out corridors. So there's a lot of work and a lot of language that's to be done on that front. Let's see, I would say if you're talking the pieces that we're studying currently, we're looking at doing 1 auxiliary lane or 2 auxiliary lanes to see whether or not 2 makes for better or worse circumstances around greenhouse gases, traffic movement, and other things. We're looking at whether or not, like we mentioned earlier, side-by-side stacked up alignments, and where does the light rail go and the pedestrian access on both of those. So we're studying those. C-Street ramps, don't worry about that. The auxiliary lanes, parking rides, and that's a shift that you don't need to know about. So let's see, skip that one. So this one, I don't know if you've all had enough time to look at this one. Looks like a lot of stuff. It's actually our super reduced one. We have a 30-page version of this with details that are boggling. I can't even read it. Frankly, but this is sort of the process that gets us to really the true construction points. A couple big things that you may hear about, which I think doesn't always make sense to folks, but once you start understanding it, you start to understand. One of the big ones is, what are we going to do about one of the pieces that we're studying is whether or not we're going to have a lift on the bridge. We currently have one. Most of the partners don't want another lift span because of the maintenance, a number of issues with it's a stoplight basically on the interstate corridor. It's particularly challenging. But that doesn't say that everybody does, because if you don't have a lift, you have to have the bridge high enough in order to accommodate big ships coming underneath it. Well, some of them, we can't have the bridge high enough to accommodate those ships. They're so big, they're moving giant wind turbines and other pieces. So what do we do about that? Well, we're negotiating with those companies to try to figure out what we can do about that. We're also working with the Coast Guard to figure out what it is we can do. So you're going to hear about the Coast Guard. It's, the Coast Guard has expressed their concerns about the height that we've suggested. We are studying both a lift and a non-lift bridge. If we do a non-lift bridge, it will require mitigations for those companies that haven't made investments upriver. And that needs money too. Yes.
How many times a year, a month, so on, do ships that large travel through the bridge? Is it twice a year? Is it Jeff Bezos' yacht once a year, or is it like that?
I think it's 5 times in the last
It's like once every 10 years.
4 years.
Once every 10 years.
It's not quite that rare,
Well, wait,
but
it's once every, so the proposed bridge is gonna be about 116 feet high off the water. So it's only like one time in every 10 years average that a vessel will pass underneath that is greater than 116 feet. So that's why the proposed fixed bridge was, they set it to accommodate 98% of all of the traffic.
I mean, you did one of the key points above. So like, it's significantly more expensive in a number of different scenarios to accommodate that. But the trick is that you can't go up too high because of an airfield, Pearson Airfield, that needs to be able to go left. You're kind of caught between this little tiny zone where you can go up this high, but if you go any higher, you get into the air. So you're going to hear about that. We're in negotiations with the Coast Guard right now. Not quite that. It's maybe a little more than that, like twice every 10 years. Let's see. A couple things I'm going to mention, and then I'll let Patrick get onto his show, and you better talk fast, Patrick. So public comment period I mentioned is going to happen at the beginning of next year. You might hear about that. It's a chance to give your opinion on what it is you think we came up with. I've talked about the mega grants. That's all. The rest of that's kind of gibberish. Starting construction 25, hopefully early 26, late 25. Yada yada yada. Here's a roll map, and I'll hand it over to you.
All right. Okay, so someone said 5 interchanges, I heard someone say that, okay. It's really important to understand why there's 5 interchanges. So the whole thing, the freeway, this is Oregon, Marine Drive interchange, North Portland Harbor, right? Hayden Island interchange, SR 14, Mill Plain, 4th Plain, 39th Street, SR 500. So I used to work for the city of Vancouver. So part of my career is, I've been all over. So I worked for the city of Vancouver as principal transportation for 3.5 years. So I got to know this side really, really well. And I was a project manager for a transportation study downtown Vancouver, which, as Aaron mentioned, and again, that there, it's awesome. It is arguably the best regional town center in the whole Portland, Vancouver metro area. And think about all the regional centers like Beaverton, like Hillsborough, Central City Gateway, you name it. Downtown Vancouver is the most urban and intact urban grid and great streetscape of all of those. And I'm not just saying that things work there, it really is a very viable and walkable and actually usable town center. So we did this transportation study. We were experiencing is an unbelievably high rate in downtown of urban crashes. I was like, what is going on? So we did this study and we set up these readers on telephone poles, kind of all over this area, and we were tracking cell phone movements, and then we were able to map that. And what we found out is during accidents or bridge lifts, traffic would start diverting pretty much up here and taking every available north-south route to get to this on-ramp right here. And so that would mean downtown Vancouver, which is a lot like downtown Portland, like small blocks, lots of stop signs. Everyone's just like going for it, trying to get to the last on-ramp to I-5 southbound, rear ends all over the place. And so we presented this information to city council, and Vancouver, they're like, what? Like, there's people going a mile to the west to go south, to come all the way back, just to avoid sitting in traffic, because people like to keep moving when they're driving. So that's why, so these intersections jam up, and the other reasons they jam up is because they're so close. And because they're so close, because the system was built, designed in the 1960s, cars were slower, they were designing turn radii much tighter. So yeah, nowadays, interchanges are built like a mile apart, sometimes 2 miles apart. So this is an antiquated system. So that's why we have this mainstay that's being replaced, but these interchanges are all getting modified to stretch out those merges, as Aaron was talking about, because they're really prone to accidents and safety problems. Okay, so it's a big project. All right, so what's the city of Portland's role? So we started this in 2019. There's a letter we sent. So it's got to have high capacity transit, cost effective demand management. That gets key to the tolling. And the tolling is very variable rate. So variable rate means off peak hours is going to be lower, but during the peak it's going to be higher, because we want more people to use the transit. Okay, I gotta ask you a question. I can take questions. If we do that, it's going to stretch this out. If we hold questions, I'm going to answer yours because you have the hand.
I can wait till the end if you want.
Well, you were raising it. You're legit. Go ahead. Go for it. After you get everyone else is full.
Okay, so going back to the map slide, like I've looked at this before, and the dark sections of the road there are new roads that are being added. And I'm showing my cards here with this question, but that's like the part of the project that I'm having a really difficult time with. Like, every time I see IBR pitched, and I mean, it was even in like the slide deck, it talks about environmentalism, it talks about reducing VMT, it talks about reducing greenhouse gases, but we know empirically that adding roads increases the demand of that thoroughfare, like it's proportional, the capacity of a road is proportional to the number of people that are going to be using it, it's almost a 1-to-1 ratio.
Yeah.
So, like, it feels kind of frustrating when, you know, it's great that we're extending the yellow line up to Vancouver, and it's great that there's gonna be bike infrastructure, but it feels like those things are kind of pushed to the side a little bit, and I'm just kind of wondering, like, you know, with such an emphasis on reducing greenhouse gases and VMT in the region, like, how did we end up here with such a large freeway extension and adding auxiliary lanes and, you know?
Alright, so there's the key point, freeway extension. So what you're seeing here is already there. And a lot of what you see, these dark lines, is rebuilding what's there. So it's, are we adding new stuff? Okay, you know what, there is some new stuff being added. And the new stuff being added, so there's 3 through lanes in each direction. And what's shown here is 3 through lanes in each direction. The additional new stuff is lengthening an exit or an on-ramp, so for merges, that can happen safely. So, for instance, over the main span, 3 through lanes each direction, that's what's there now, it's what's gonna get rebuilt. Aaron talked about 1 auxiliary lane. So the 1 auxiliary lane goes from Hayden Island exit to SR14 to Vancouver exit. So, okay, what does that look like scale-wise? It's the same size as the San Jackson Bridge. I mean, Glen Jackson Bridge. I say that, you know. Glen Jackson Bridge, I-205. It's the same 4 lanes in each direction. And for City of Portland, that was a benchmark. When we were, in 2019, when Mayor Wheeler wrote that letter, they knew it was like, we don't want anything bigger than the Glen Jackson Bridge. I mean, getting to that that's our comfort zone. You start going 2 auxiliary lanes, your point, bingo. You get induced demand. And you add and make it wider, and then it's easier for people to use, more people use it, and less people want to take transit. So that's why, you know, for safety reasons, we capped it.
Can I?
And the city, yeah.
So I think, what you're saying is, you know, the sort of, burden that we carry on this project continuously, because we are, cognizant of the climate issues and, you know, a number of other things, but, I think, what I would recommend is, because what Patrick is saying is correct, I think that's what the executive steering group really struggled with, was like, currently we have a parking lot where folks sit there and just burn fuel as they sit, right? And so, do you want to accommodate all those people burning fuel so they can get places faster, so that more people can come and burn more fuel and fill it up again? I mean, it's a legitimate question. So I think what we're doing right now is, in our environmental process, is looking at when we add, what if we don't do anything? What if we do the rebuild with 1 aux lane? What if we do the rebuild with 2 aux lanes? And we're measuring the throughput, because the city of Portland has concerns about being overwhelmed with cars. We're also measuring the carbon impact of what does this actually do, using metric models to figure out, is it going to dramatically decrease based on current in the future. So I highly recommend, when that information comes out at the beginning of next year, to take a look at it. It's going to be accessible. You're going to be able to look at all the numbers, and you're going to say, okay, so what does this actually do? And then give us your feedback on that. Because I think what you're suggesting is true. I think what I'm guessing is going to happen is it's going to show that we're going to push people through more efficiently. We're going to have comparable or less CO2 emissions. But that's also going to be because of some of the transition to light rail and some of the other circumstances. But I'm not sure until we see the numbers.
Well,
So we are studying.
And the biggest circumstance is demand management. That was key.
Yeah, that's a great
That's
point. Yeah.
tolling. Like, if there was not going to be tolling, I wouldn't be here talking about this project at all. I mean, it's just crazy to think that we have what we have without tolls. I mean, because we don't have a way to manage it right now. It's a free for all. People can just use it however they want. But if we toll it, we can start to regulate and meter the flow. Okay, it's not as good as I wish it would be. You know, like in other states, they have variable rate tolling, which can fluctuate based on demand. Ours is gonna be fixed for now. There's gonna be a low rate and a high rate. But demand management is definitely a key part of that. All right, I got a lot of stuff.
37 slides.
I'm gonna get moving. Okay, so this is a huge project in a part of the city that hardly ever sees investment. Aaron nailed it right. It's Portland's backyard. It's Vancouver's front yard. Vancouver City Council is all over this project. You talk to our city council, they're like, oh yeah, that's that thing up on Hayden Island, right? Yeah, okay. All right, so it's a huge project, incredible part of the city. We're a river city. We've all heard that, right? River City. Yeah, do we have an address in the Columbia River? No, we don't. That pisses me off, doesn't it? I mean, we're all about the Land River, and even with the Land River, you don't really have much of an address. I mean, it's okay, you can look down over a seawall and see it, but you can't hardly get to the water. Maybe you can at Poets Beach, but anyway, we can do much better on the Columbia River. So leveraging this investment to get some good things out of it is going to be important. It can have a huge impact. We have to manage those impacts. And City of Portland, it's really important to center equity and climate change are like the lens everything gets pushed through. So that affects all of our decisions. So as part of getting to where we are now, we did a ton of outreach. This is all of our commissions and all of our committees. You know, we're doing our work.
I've been to all of those.
He's been to all those meetings. And then so as Aaron, the slide is similar to what Aaron showed before. City Council endorsed this LPA means locally preferred alternative in July of 2022. And, you know, for basically one aux lane in, you know, on next to the 3 lanes, rebuilding Hayden Island Interchange, Marine Drive, having light rail, having a job program and community benefits program to help spread the work out so that there's potential for wealth generation for a variety of folks. Reducing climate and greenhouse gas reduction is important, and demand management and light rail help get to that. So let me keep going here. So when City Council said, okay, yeah, we're going to endorse that plan, we had these 7 pages of conditions. These are just the topics that said, yeah, you can do this, but you need to do this and this and this and this and this. 7 pages long.
And just to be fair, City of Portland may have hold the record for the most numbers of conditions, but we had 163 from all of our partners, and a lot of them are all incomplete. So we're trying to negotiate between it. It's just the nature of the complicated project.
Yes, Aaron didn't have gray hair before he started working on this project. Okay, so all right, let's put this in context. So the city, I-5 going through, but I mean, it's a system. It's I-5, I-205, I-84, I-405, you have your state highways. But when I look at this, and we all love Portland neighborhoods and the fine grain and the main streets. So think about that, how it feels to walk on the sidewalk. Look at the size of this footprint of all these yellow strips. It's huge. It's an enormous amount of land. So just looking around, so in East Portland, your Gateway, Burnside Street, when this was built in the 60s and 70s, it was built to move cars, right? Get it done. There's a giant Eisenhower Interstate tax for national defense purposes and for moving cars. But what it did, what they had no idea in mind, they just wanted to build a thing and get it done. They didn't really, there wasn't this thought about, what about the land uses on the other side? What about the neighborhoods? So what it did, it divided things. So you think this neighborhood and this neighborhood are the same? Or do you think these people, like, neighborhoods were completely divided and the city got divided?
Or obliterated.
Or obliterated, right? So this is in East Portland. And I mean, that's what it feels like. It's not, this is not a place where you want to be. Southwest Portland. This is near Burlingame. That's a Burlingame Fred Meyer, two other curves up there. But it's a giant footprint and it divides up these awesome neighborhoods. And it looks kind of similar to the last one, this giant expanse that's not a great place to walk. In North Portland, you see I-5, lots of great neighborhoods, but you know, you got the neighborhoods on one side of I-5 and the neighborhoods on the other, and there's not hardly any connections between the two. And again, it's just more of this car-centric. So in North Portland, up near Marine Drive, and then Hayden Island, and this is pretty fascinating, because this is Portland streetcar network era, 1900s. This is a bluff where it goes down to Columbia and Lombard. So pretty much from here up to SR 14 across the river, that was all Columbia River floodplain. Braided channels, full of wildlife, it flooded, cottonwood trees.
Is that Vanport just for geographic?
Yeah.
Vanport.
This is Vanport.
Vanport is right under the A in Portland, if you like in that area south. That's where Vanport was. So, yeah, this is a flood-prone area that was drained and levee system built, and then it, you know, I-5 went in, and then, oh my God, all these highway uses popped up all over this available land. So what happened was, these neighborhoods here, I mean, there's this divider, and there's neighborhoods up there on Hayden Island, and in Bridgeton, and East Columbia. They have no relationship to the city of Portland. I mean, they might as well be part of Vancouver. Sometimes they like it that way, sometimes they don't, but, you know, there's always been a need to help connect these neighborhoods to make it feel like part of Portland. And then, you know, more of the highway infrastructure, it doesn't feel like anywhere. This could be New Jersey. You know, it could be anywhere. I'm from the East Coast. Okay. So can we do better? We can. All right, quick question. Or you can wait.
I understand all the complexities, but what I haven't heard, what's this gonna look like? Is this something we're gonna be proud of?
That's where I'm going. Give me a chance. All right. So the challenge is, as I just mentioned, so we have disconnected neighborhoods, particularly up that part of Portland. There's like no connection to like North Portland, Piedmont, Kenton area at all. You know, the other challenge is that the ways that people can connect are on these giant roads like MLK, I-5, even Denver. Denver used to be a streetcar route up to Hayden Island. It just got turned into like a giant road that's part of Victory Boulevard interchange and so on. But there's these incredible opportunities. So the river, it's like, yeah, it's part of our address problem. We ignore the Columbia River. But there are the Smith and Body wetlands, there is the Stewart Vanport, there is the whole system of sloughs and flood control up there. Hardly anyone ever knows about, but it's all an amazing place. And we've extended light rail up most of it, right? To get to Expo Center, the funny orange blobs are the walk sheds for what you can walk to around those light rail areas. So these are opportunities and challenges. Some other ones on Hayden Island, again, it's this footprint issue. It's a divider. Yeah, yes, thank you. You know, the only way on and off Hayden Island to Bridgeton is on the freeway. So the residents hate that. They, you know, people who live in the neighborhoods think that they have to use a freeway to get from one neighbor to another. We can do better. All right, so Aaron talked about riding a bike, so when I worked for City of Vancouver for 3.5 years, I rode across the bridge every day. It sucks. Has anyone ever done it? Okay, all right, so you know the 3-foot sidewalk.
Anybody like it?
The 3-foot sidewalk, so riding north, you're on this 3-foot sidewalk, and you're riding north, I wanna look at Mount Hood. I want to, but if I look, I'm gonna turn, I'm gonna hit the guardrail, I'm gonna end up in the river. So it's like, it's terrifying and frustrating, because it's actually a good view, but this is, to me, it's insulting what's there, I hate it. And then, so there's also these missing links. So Vancouver Williams Couplet, it's one of the city's best north-south bikeways. It kind of ends like right around the Columbia Saloon. Then it's industrial area. And the white line up at the top is where the I-5 IBR improvements to active transportation, that's where they end. So these yellow lines represent a gap that we need to fill. That's not currently part of the IBR program. It's something that the city and IBR need to work out, but we need to make this connection. Because how many of you are going to cross the new Blumenauer Bridge? 5 people? Okay. The new facility going over the Columbia River is going to be same size. It's going to be almost like the same thing, but it's going to be going over the Columbia River, across Hayden Island, across North Portland Harbor, through the Marine Drive interchange in a much simpler, cleaner, more convenient way. But we need to connect it to the Vancouver Williams Couplet. I mean, it's a no-brainer. We have to do it. Yeah, I mean, riding up Marine Drive interchange, it's just awful.
That's a nice.
And then, just this idea of establishing connections, like what if we actually had a neighborhood connection to Hayden Island or to Bridgeton, or even to Expo Center or to Delta Park, that you didn't have to use a car. It was as convenient to get there by bike or ped as if it was by car.
Yeah.
So this is the kind of connectivity that the city of Portland is going for. So we can do that. So, here's the Vancouver Williams Couplet. So let's connect. There's improvements already to Schneer Road, to Whitaker, a new path through Delta Park that goes to Vancouver. So connecting the Vancouver Williams Couplet in northeast Portland neighborhoods to downtown Vancouver with all modern state-of-the-art facilities. And then also on the other side of I-5 is connecting Kenton up to Expo and then connecting Expo over to Hayden Island. So getting bike paths on either side of I-5 that connect north-south. So it's providing, think about modal equality, right? Y'all think about this area, it's so full of cars and it's all about car mobility. It's like neutralizing that, say, all right, it's gonna be as good for bikes and pedestrians as it is for cars. That's where we're going. So during CRC, PBOT and Bureau of Planning, the city, we redid the Hayden Island plan. So CRC would have been a multi-billion-dollar investment. It's like, how do you leverage that? So Hayden Island, the development's going to respond, right? So how do you get development to be a neighborhood? So you have the Hayden Island plan, which took advantage of what CRC would have built as a new Main Street on Hayden Island to go east-west, because I mentioned that the highway is a divider between east and west. So there would have been a new local street going underneath I-5 to connect your regional retail center to neighborhoods on either side. So that's the blue, is that cool connector. But the footprint of CRC was huge. It was 29 acres and 650 feet wide. This is the CRC footprint was big. We swallowed hard with it. It was just like, ugh, okay, it's CRC. We know that the bridge has to get rebuilt, the interchange had to get rebuilt. It was the best design at the time, but it was still massive. And these red arrows are where freeway ramps would have come down. So that means they're okay. It's like ODOT style bike facilities. They're not as good as ours. But we wouldn't those streets wouldn't feel like a neighborhood greenway, which is what we want it to feel like. So with IDR, from 2019, from the get-go, we were trying to say, hold on, can we have a smaller footprint on Hayden Island? Like, we can do this better. So we went from 49 acres, 650 feet wide, to 18 acres and 280 feet wide with a different kind of design. And what helps make that local design, that design work is this local bridge that Aaron was talking about. So we're able to pull some of that width, some of that traffic off of the I-5 width and put it on a local bridge that does a lot of things. I mean, it connects Hayden Island neighborhoods to Bridgeton neighborhoods, which then, I'll show you in a sec, connects over to Expo and connects Expo to Kent. So all of a sudden, where we had no local streets before, we're gonna have local streets that go from Kenton to Expo to Bridgeton, over a local bridge, over to Hayden Island. So, Thuy, do we have a laser pointer? No?
No.
Okay, all right. So this green line, right over North Portland Harbor is that local bridge. So the black lines that are street grid on Hayden Island. The local bridge goes over, does this loop, goes back under I-5 to Expo, which is number 11. Then that road, Expo Road, gets rebuilt to, that's the Victory interchange, and then there is a shared use path facility that heads over to Kent. So this is a game changer for the city because we don't have local streets up there. And now we're gonna have like a grid of local streets and a much smaller footprint on Hayden Island. So, you know, Matt, and so there's tons of details to work out. We still need to manage the footprint, and we're still gonna have bridge structures going over these local streets. So think about the Rose Quarter. Ugh. We have local streets going under I-5 and they all suck. Nobody, like, businesses avoid those areas. People don't like walking under bridges. They're not attractive places to be. They've got railings and guardrails and barbed wire. I mean, for all the reasons we all know why that stuff is there, but it's not a place we want to be. So, you know, the original I-5 and Interstate infrastructure was built without that in mind, but now we do have it in mind. So how can we build it so it's value add instead of like decades of mitigation of like, how do we deal with this problem? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
I'm from New York City, there's a few underpasses that are very pleasant places. Hoping the next slide shows the solution.
Okay, yeah, cool. So this is in Eugene. I was in Eugene last week. And this is I-105. It's a bypass, but they have a park, skate park, horseshoe pits. So actually, they created an under freeway environment. That's actually pretty cool. This is in Presidio in San Francisco. This is brand new stuff. Right off the Golden Gate Bridge. It is done really well. And the designers put more emphasis on the local streets and the ground plane than they did in this infrastructure. They kept this stuff so simple and so low profile because they wanted the experience to be at the ground level. Yeah, this is really pleasant place to be. And then here's some other examples. This is Hayden Island today. Doesn't have to be like that. It could be programmed to be fun like that. You can even do land development, take advantage of these opportunities. You know, make it a place where people want to be. So this is like the big shift that the city is pushing for, is not to have these awkward leftover spaces where, oh my God, what are we gonna do? It's such a problem. Let's do it right this time instead of having to deal with problems later.
Remind me of Granville Island in Vancouver.
Great, perfect example.
Yeah.
Yeah, Granville Island in Vancouver. Has anyone ever been there? Except you and I, a handful? Okay. Yeah, Granville Island is this, it's almost the same size as Hayden Island, maybe a little smaller, but it's under a huge freeway. But it is like an arts destination. It's packed with people, and it's everything, all the stuff is underneath these bridges with giant columns and everything like that. But, you know, with intent at the start, you can get there. But you got to think of it first. You have to push hard to make sure you don't preclude those opportunities later.
Yeah, so one thing I think, just to chime in on that, is, you know, I worked at TriMet and we built a number of infrastructure projects. And I think the thing to think about infrastructure, I mean, again, it is a rebuilding of a road, rebuilding of a bridge, big whoop. But I think when you make investments like this, these are opportunities to rethink how you deal with all of these things. And there are many ways, many paths that these things can go. But the opportunity, when we would do light rail corridors, it wasn't a light rail just laying track, it was a corridor. How streets, grids connect up, how iPad connects up, what does the neighborhood look like, what are we gonna do with the land around it? Same exact issue with this, is you have an opportunity to change something that was built in a particular way from a different generation and change it into something that is more functional for today. And I think that is the opportunity. There's a lot of detail. We have just basically said, here's some of we're studying the basic pieces of it. All of, you know, what Patrick's talking about are like the next, how would you say, 4 years, 3 years, you know, of us sort of figuring out what is it all gonna look like? How is it all gonna connect up? You know, what are the investments that are gonna be made? What is the city gonna do to connect up? What is the Interstate Bridge project gonna do to leverage assets? What's the city of Vancouver gonna do? I mean, it's all happening right now, so.
All right, this is the last slide. So it was 137. You guys did great. All right, now it's a question free for all.
This is your last slide, are you serious?
Yeah. He talks fast.
Yeah.
Hey.
All right, I'll take you first.
Do you want to take a break at all?
No,
Or you want to keep on going?
it's up to them.
Keep on going, okay.
So how does this project, like you're saying, there's no address on the Columbia? A lot of us realize that the best views in town are one in Columbia and East Portland. How does that integrate to get you over towards the Glen Jackson and over 40 Mile Loop and out to the gorge? And what are the impacts on the Glen Jackson? And that.
Okay. Lots in your question. All right. First part, how to get an address on the Columbia River. So part of the Hayden Island plan that was done with CRC was, the DOTs, ODOT, WashDOT, they have to buy land to build the big new thing. And they buy land because they need to put a bridge there, but they also buy land because there's so much material that has to come in, steel, concrete, trucks, you name it. They need places to like put all that stuff and get organized. So they buy land around and they use it for construction staging. Okay, so that is DOT owned land, building the bridge. And then once the bridge is built and it's done, okay, DOT still owns it. They typically unload it. So that green land on the river, that's gonna be an area where the DOTs are gonna own land. So can the city work a deal and get that to be a new public park?
And I'm saying how do you then connect? Because this is Hayden Island.
Right.
Right. How do you travel east? How do you bring in the east into this? I mean, if I'm there and I move around and I go along Marine Drive and the country club there and the yacht club.
Yep.
Along the Columbia, that should be able to take me out of the gorge.
Yep.
How does that happen from there?
You know, you're asking the exact right person. Okay, so my other project, when I'm not working on IDR, I'm working on this project with Army Corps of Engineers to fix low spots in the levees along Marine Drive. So right now, the 40 Mile Loop Trail, which you're referring to, which from Northeast 33rd east goes all the way into Troutdale and then into Columbia Gorge, but you get to Northeast 33rd to I-5, there's a gap. And it's so irritating. I'm a cyclist, so this gap is so irritating. Okay, we're fixing that with these two projects combined. So the Levy Ready project is gonna rebuild a section of Marine Drive because it's low. They get to lift Marine Drive 3 feet. It's kind of weird. So the whole road gets lifted up. But when it gets lifted up and rebuilt, they're gonna build a shared use path alongside of it. And then Bridgeton Road gets lifted up 18 inches. The whole street gets rebuilt. So that's gonna become part of the 40-mile loop also. And then the levee between the end of Bridgeton Road and I-5 is gonna get raised. So there's gonna be a paved path on top of the levee. So finally, from the 40-mile loop trail, which comes, on the north side of Expo, hits I-5 and kind of like goes nowhere, is gonna be able to continue on top of the levee, on Bridgeton Road, on the shared use path along Marine Drive, and then it's gonna connect to Northeast 33rd 40-mile loop. So finally, that gap will be done.
Yeah, so it's a gap. Yeah, the gap for the.
Oh, yes. Yeah, there's a gap over by Glen Jackson. It's out of my two project areas. But this is gonna be such a big improvement. Well,
Actually, if you complain enough, you might get that.
I know, I have to complain more, right, I'll keep complaining. Yeah.
The actual bridge itself, maybe this is a transportation no-no, but like I'm thinking about opening up more lanes southbound in the morning and northbound in the evening to accommodate higher volumes. Is that even something that?
Such an interesting question. So, actually, it gets to a question, I don't know that person's name.
Sasha.
Yeah, it gets to Sasha's point earlier about, freeway expansion. Because, so I-405, where I-5 southbound meets I-405 with Fremont Bridge, that backs up, and it backs up. So if you were to add more lanes southbound on the I-5 bridge, the backup from 405 diminishes the benefit that you would get from adding more lanes, so it wouldn't even work that much. However,
I'm not talking about adding more lanes, I'm talking about making so say it's 3 and 3.
yeah,
Southbound in the morning, you
Oh.
have 4 lanes southbound and only 2
Like in
lanes.
Seattle.
Yeah, or
Like-
something like that.
like-
Accommodate
The
the-
bottleneck is still running the same thing.
right,
Oh,
like with,
it's still the same, because you got an arrow. Gotcha.
like with a zipper,
I
like
see.
they use in California, they use.
Understood.
The only way to reduce VMT is to provide an alternative option to get cars off of the road.
Yeah.
Understood.
Okay,
So all I'm saying, so our goal here is to move more people and favor fewer vehicles, would you say that?
yeah,
Okay, have you considered adding a bike lane or not a bike lane, sorry, a bus lane?
yes, so there's
Or,
gonna
sorry,
be,
just then I'll ask and then I'll get up my questions. If variable tolling for our car.
okay. There's gonna be a light rail built over the river into the.
I got that,
Got that. There's gonna be an express bus lane built north-south in addition to the light rail. So you got light rail, you got express
Is
buses.
that existing?
No,
So currently, there aren't shoulders even, for big sections of it. So if you get into an accident, you just hang out in the traffic lane, which is a huge cause of a lot of congestion. So what this is gonna do is in addition to make lanes more modern, making them a little bit wider, it will also add shoulders on both sides so that, and then one of those shoulders in each direction will be dedicated to express bus. So that they don't have to deal with any of the traffic in that whole corridor. And then connect up, so and where those express buses go, that's still TBD, but it does open it up so that the Vancouver side they want to run some express buses that they're very attached.
and then the bike lane part, yes. I mean,
Yeah, she
No,
was
no.
saying that was a mistake.
no, but it's actually a really good point. I just want to hit on because e-bikes are something that is changing active transportation commuting. I don't have an e-bike, but I get dusted by e-bikes all the time. I'm getting tired of it. But,
If you make it tall, you're gonna need e-bikes.
well, there could be people going, but I think between the Vancouver market, so like North Portland, I think it's gonna become e-bike central personally. So that's why a design like the Blumenauer Bridge, something that's 25 feet wide, is gonna be really important because it's gonna be able to accommodate, the speed differentials between people pedaling like me versus assholes like Aaron who are on the e-bikes. Sorry, I'm just kidding, sorry for that slip.
It's okay, you don't even record it.
I got you now.
I'll have to buy all the beers for you.
Yes.
Okay.
Your point though about the
Elevation.
yeah, it's elevation, there's a super specific to grade
Great.
of the bridge, so that was the challenge for Telecom. Because really, in order to have it be high enough off, but also narrow enough, there was a lot of work to get it perfectly graded, so it was, but it's as steep as you can get and still meet ADA. This bridge, even with the proposed 116 height, will actually have a lesser grade than the Telecom. The challenge is though, is that it's gonna be longer. So maybe it's less of a grade, but it's gonna be longer. So that's gonna be.
It's ADA for people on the right.
American Disabilities.
No, but.
Yeah, you do, I mean, when you build facilities to accommodate folks, accommodate ADA, it benefits pedestrians and cyclists. So that's, and I think cyclists should always be very supportive of all ADA improvements because they go hand in hand.
Okay. I'm thinking again about Vancouver, is there any?
DC or DC or what?
DC.
Okay.
Even though the grade will be as steep as Telecom, it's longer, would there be consideration of running some sort of shuttle bus or bike shuttle so that folks who just want to travel a short distance but don't want to bike that still?
I mean, you can take your bike on light rail. It'll just be right on your side.
Yeah, there's gonna be stations at Expo, at Hayden Island, and at Waterfront.
Yeah.
So you can just ride across.
And we're requiring, this is part of city board condition, is to have rest areas and viewpoints along the bridge, so people can stop, take pictures, do selfies, all that.
Catch that breath.
Catch the breath. Let me get purple and then blue.
So I have a question about one of the first slides that you showed where you were talking, well, multiple slides, you were talking about the different benefits of the IVR. I've been studying public health for a while, and I think in public health, it's really important to focus on both the pros and the cons so that people can make well-informed, balanced decisions. And I think part of the benefits weigh on the light rail expansion. Has that been confirmed? Who's paying for it? Especially like, not to generalize Vancouver, but the idea of having a waterfront light rail station doesn't sound like something that they would want to happen. So who, is this just a proposed idea? Is this confirmed? Is this like actually gonna happen? And if it doesn't happen, what are the pros and the cons?
So I can say this probably pretty comfortably, stop recording. That this project won't be built out.
No,
The fund doesn't work out. There's a federal investment that brings in about $1.2 billion of the project. But even beyond the financing piece of it, the city of Vancouver strongly supportive of the light rail. The city of Portland would probably stimulate themselves if we took light rail out of this project.
Yeah.
It's just not an option. The difference, I think, from what you remember from CRC is that Vancouver is a city in Southwest Washington. Around Vancouver is Clark County, which is a more conservative, more rural community that does have issues with public transportation, with light rail, and with some other issues. And so there's a negotiation, but the demographics, again, the demographic slide, and also the demographics of the folks that are there currently representing have changed a lot. And so the issue of light rail has not been, the transit piece has not been, the question is how long does the transit extend to, and it's a little shorter this time than it was in the previous iteration, but part of that was to ameliorate some of the the concerns of getting some of the super anti-light rail folks propped up. So they ended up, you haven't really heard nearly as much about it. So that.
Well, the other part of my question were, what are the cons? Because I think it's important to know both of those.
So the cons of light rail?
The cons of this entire replacement project.
Oh, that's a good question. I would say, paying for infrastructure is everything you pay for public goods are choices. Money you spend here is money you're not spending there. And so one of the arguments that you'll hear is we could take big chunks of this money that you're spending on this infrastructure, $6 billion infrastructure project, and spend it on bike paths throughout the city and replacing bridges all over the state and things like that. Those are all true in a sort of, we hand a $6 billion pot of cash to somebody, but the way these projects are cobbled together and incented, those are it's a little challenging. But even then, for Oregonians, we did make a commitment of $1 billion from our legislature, and that's $1 billion of funding that will not go someplace else. That's a trade-off. I think other trade-offs when you look at these projects is capacity for our region to be able to do other big projects. You know, it takes a lot of construction, it takes a lot of effort, political effort, and that sort of is a giant stepping stone that can exhaust people from doing other important infrastructure projects in our state even. So there are definitely cons.
Yeah, especially making the community more livable.
That's right.
Yeah, and more resilient. I-5 is a lifeline route, and that's a federally designated term for how disaster response between regions of the country. So there's lifeline security. Well, actually, this one isn't so national security, but it's actually a lifeline route because when the Cascadia subduction zone, CSZ, when that happens, so the project is being built to a 9.0 earthquake. So when that happens, pretty much the only bridges that are going to be up are Tillicum, Selwood, and that little bridge over to Hayden Island. I mean, to Soviet Island. So so be able to get to Soviet Island, so.
Soviet Island is just sitting in
So those are the only 3 bridges left. But so that's okay. In the back.
Someone had a question before me, and
Oh, sorry.
So purple and
Oh,
blue.
yes,
So I have a mini question, a bigger question. First one is, of that $7 million, how much of that is for the freeway?
I have this, it's online. I can get back to you on that. So what I do know is that 2.7 to 3.2 billion is investment in Oregon, and then the other part is in Washington. For the light rail is like 1.2 billion.
That's what the FTA has been paid for it, yeah. If you're talking how much of the total cost is gonna go towards the highway actually itself, boy, I wanna say it's in the 3.5 billion, but I'm not positive. Let me give you my card. I'll get you that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The second one is, you're talking about this, like maybe putting a park on Hayden Island. I mean, thinking about being on the part of the East Bay Esplanade that's right next to Thuy.
Yeah.
I don't know how much I would wanna picnic there, frankly. And then also like, you know, things that are adjacent to it, like Tubman, like they stay inside because their air quality is so bad. Like, are there mitigations that's gonna happen for noise and particulates, which is not gonna be solved by electric cars, which is gonna be worse?
Right. Okay. Awesome comparison of East Bank Esplanade and I-5 proximity and I love East Bank Esplanade. It's pretty awesome. It'd be better if I-5 wasn't roaring right there. So there's a lot of, it's so interesting, the noise impacts of East Bank Esplanade, of like how it all works. Particularly if you're on East Bank Esplanade, you go underneath Morrison Bridge or underneath the Burnside Bridge. where I-5 goes underneath those bridge decks and it just bounces. And then it's like a big echo chamber. Same thing happens near Omsi, where you get underneath the Markham Bridge, it's really loud. So, interestingly, as Aaron mentioned, the two options being studied for the main bridge are one is a stacked option and one is like side by side flat. So there are people who are saying, looking at the stacked option, saying, we have a Fremont Bridge and we have a Markham Bridge, and the sound bounces off the deck of the upper one and radiates down all over South Waterfront, Ross Island Bridge area, Omsi area, at any bridge head along the East Bank Esplanade. So we're kind of thinking, I don't know about stacked bridge. So people are thinking, you know, these flat bridges, and the way a noise cone works from when a vehicle is, so the sound you hear from cars going by is from the tire on the road. So there is like this wedge of noise that goes out from a tire. And so if it's a flat bridge, that noise cone goes out like this. It's not going to bounce up and bounce back down. So it could be less noise. However, that stuff needs to be studied. It's an excellent question.
It is gonna be studied. Yeah.
So, yeah, the viability of that park may not be exactly that spot, may not be exactly that configuration, that's just a green block. That park might be moved over a little bit, it might be something else. But the idea is to have a park on the river for people to have access to incredible.
We're studying those issues, and we're also gonna be doing health impact analysis to determine, getting an external folks to come in and take a look at some of those exact things.
Yes.
To determine, because you don't wanna make investments in areas that are unpleasant, and they're certainly, except East Bay, that's probably you don't have a lot of choice.
Yeah.
Did you also mention air pollution?
Yes,
Yeah.
particulates, yeah. Yeah, and that's a big one, and I think that, part of the challenge of having it's in people's interest to make sure that traffic is moving through that corridor, because it's significant reduction in pollution if you actually are moving at a certain pace rather than sitting, and I think, but it is, unfortunately, when you're next to a large infrastructure project like this, those are hard conversations.
But that's exactly why the city has demand management, and the tolling is so important to us, because we still need a way, we need a tool, a lever to start ratcheting down demand. Because if we don't have any kind of tool or lever, it's just gonna be induced demand, and it's gonna be free fall.
Another part.
You might not have an answer to this, but is tolling gonna be maximizing revenue, or is it gonna be about minimizing?
You are a transportation nerd. Love it.
I think I'm here.
Wanna make some money?
I love that.
I like money.
It's gonna, ideally, it's both. I think from like our city council's perspective is let's raise the tolls to really manage demand. However, the city is within the region, and the city and the region have to work with the Oregon Transportation Commission and the Washington State Transportation Commission. They set the toll rates. So it's a big political thing.
And I think that, that's a big, that's like the crux of a tolling challenge right now is how do you set the rates that don't mean Washingtonians are going to be paying 70% of the tolls. And so that's the conversation amongst partners, and how much revenue, that's a good question. If you drive prices up too high, you could conceivably drive the numbers down far enough that you don't have enough money to pay for the infrastructure that you just invested in using those tolls. We're doing a number of revenue events to try to kind of figure out what those models look like, so we can find the sweet spot to be able to do what folks want, which is demand management while also paying for the infrastructure. So the emphasis, I don't think, is necessarily 100% on either or, but you got to make at least enough money to pay for what you invested in. And then after that, there's maintenance issues, and then there's sort of philosophical issues.
So when extending the yellow line to Vancouver, obviously that would require extending the TriMet service boundary. What have the conversations been like surrounding kind of like the geographic boundary of where that might encompass, talking to Clark County and Washington DOT about, that service district, because TriMet's kind of a weird in-between governmental organization, but, in the name, Tri-County Metropolitan Transit District of Oregon. Like, how has that kind of complicated things? What are the conversations looking like around extending that service district?
Okay, indeed complicated. TriMet operates light rail. C-Tran in Vancouver operates bus rapid transit. And they love their bus rapid transit and their bus network. They are not interested in operating light rail. However, the two transit agencies are part of a regional transportation strategy to serve each other. There's lots of C-Tran buses that come down to downtown Portland. And, I remember working for PBOT, and when we were rebuilding the transit mall and the streets around the transit mall where the buses turn on and off, a lot of C-Tran buses are hybrids with heavy battery packs. And I'm sure all of you ever know, you ever seen like where a bus stop is and where the wheels turn, you get those weird divots? Like buses are heavy. They hammer people. I mean, it is really, really, really impactful. And that's why TriMet and C-Tran do these concrete bus pads all over. So when the wheels turn, it's not grinding down. So they're proud of their bus system. We're proud of our light rail and bus system. The operational expense of everything north of the state line for the two stops in Vancouver it's not fully worked out yet, but everyone knows we have to get to an agreement. But the details are, so those discussions are ongoing.
Well, so let me fill in the blanks a little bit on that. You're exactly right. TriMet is statutorily not allowed to serve outside of this district unless it can make exceptions. In the state legislature, TriMet was created by the state legislature. It's in statute or it's 267. And so in order for TriMet to be able to actually serve into Vancouver, there's going to have to be what are called intergovernmental agreements, which I'm sure you'll heard about them, and there's going to be a lot of them. And it's going to, because there's going to have to be determinations about how to cover who's going to maintain the light rail stops, who's going to be paying for the service. It's not insurmountable. A lot of other states have by state, but it's definitely a conversation. I was just in a 2-hour meeting yesterday on that exact subject. Right now, the big questions are really around how much is it going to cost and who's going to pay for this, what's the share going to be? How much is TriMet going to be on the hook for? How much is Washington? How are we going to pay for that? That really is a fundamental challenge of this project that has me up at night a little bit, because it's another way in which we have to figure out how to get a stream of revenue to pay for both those transit options from two very different areas. So, but it's a challenge.
So very small follow-up question
Sure,
to that. Is there a future that exists where the light rail is built, but the service district isn't extended because they're able to work out some sort of interstate agreement?
Yes, and there's also a universe in which, once this is built, if it's proven to be hugely successful and excited, if the folks are excited about it, that they will extend it inch farther in. There are, a number of areas. It was extended, I think, another like 2 miles in the original CRC discussion. So I think that's kind of the idea, is to get it, see if people really like it. If they do, but T-Tran's done a lot of work on their bus rapid transit, and so there's going to be a lot of hooking those two systems up so that it's easy for people to use those feeders to get to the light rail stations, and so maximize that investment. So yeah, and then once that happens, the question is, what does that look like? Now TriMet's operating 2 or 3 miles into Washington. That's a complicated question. Great.
Wait, hold on. You've had your hand up for us.
Yeah.
Greg, you mentioned a couple times that idea of using a freeway project to connect neighborhoods. The Rose Quarter freeway expansion is doing that pitch too, I think. I guess, like my gut instinct, not informed, was pretty skeptical to that. Are there projects we could look to where that works? That is pretty easy to catch. Places where somebody has improved connections with the freeway project.
Right, so, the IVR project where, yeah, it's interesting, it's an interstate bridge project that is building local streets that are making connections that aren't there. It's an outlier, I would say that. The comparison to Rose Quarter, Rose Quarter, through its iterations, and I'm not on that project, but I know enough to be dangerous, is that, because of, the historic impacts to the, African American community and African American neighborhoods that got wiped out. And not all to blame for the DOTs, the city of Portland had a huge role in urban renewal and just wiping that stuff out. And now making amends and recognizing, we can do better. So that's the lid is a big part of Rose Quarter and reconnecting the Albina neighborhood to Central East Side. And restoring those local street connections, enabling redevelopment to try to restore those neighborhoods. So,
Didn't you have a couple of example slides there? One of them was a narrow deck with in San Francisco. That was that a replacement or was that a new build?
No, that was replacement.
So that would be an example of going from crap to better.
That's right.
I mean, which is what your question is, right? It's like, because this is basically taking something that is significantly dysfunctional in that regard.
Right.
And turning it into something that is, significantly more functional. I think
Right.
if you take some time and actually go look at Marine Drive from what does this look like as a neighborhood, which I didn't really ever do because I tried to do the city cares and never noticed it. But now that I actually am on the project, I've ridden my bike all around there and taken a look at it. And it's like, oh my goodness, it's just like a dead zone. I think the idea, which is what Patrick's referring to, is to take that, this is an opportunity to take that untangle mess, reorganize it in a way that works better for today, and connect up all the streets so that you can actually use them. So.
Sure, but the concept is clear.
Yes.
Like, I've lived in Eugene, I've been to that part.
Yeah.
It's fine, it's way better than what's under most freeways.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's like a facility that connects that neighborhood. And
Yeah,
I've been there,
yeah,
that's what I'm worried about. What-
Yeah.
what we would do. And if
No.
the answer is we don't know, we're gonna find here, that's totally fair.
Yeah, no, it's fully legit question, and comment. And, so in Eugene, that park, you still have the freeway thing, right? And you have neighborhood development here, neighborhood development here, this thing.
Well, that's Jefferson Street Bridge, right? It does a basketball court and,
Yeah.
so Jefferson Street Bridge, you have one side of Jefferson Street Bridge is business and industrial, and the other side is neighborhood. So there's not a connection for neighborhood in that particular.
Right,
I
but-
agree as well.
But that park is a place where people can go. And it's a place where people do like to go and hang out and be. It's not a place that people avoid. Like the thing that always pops into my head when I'm thinking about this is, Multnomah Street, right by the Rose Quarter, going underneath I-5, right in front of the Rose Garden Arena. I mean, there's that really weird stretch, you go under I-5, and it's just like, walk underneath here, what am I stepping in? How much crinkling sound of broken glass, when I get underneath my shoes. It's never something where that adds value to the neighborhoods or the land uses on either side. It's something that we're always mitigating. So the whole point here is, how can we redo this where we're not put in a position where we have to mitigate later for problems? Let's try to do it better and with more intent at the onset. So that's what we're trying to do. Other places have done it. I mean, it's hard work. Yeah.
I think that's a really great question and also bridges a gap. At towards the end of the class, we'll have our Thuy Adams from 1803 Fund to talk about building a plan.
Perfect.
So I think a big part of this class and also the continuation of the big projects. This is the only class where I'm bringing in Interstate Bridge and the I-5, I'll them. So it's gonna be really interesting having all the conversations together. I do want to do a time check. We're gonna have 10 minutes left for the class.
Oh,
And we can continue on with questions, because I think this is such a richness in conversations with everyone. It really spurs some great ideas and discussions. So we can continue with the Q&A part of it, if you all want. I'm gonna leave it up to you. Got our guests here, we're like the experts now.
I just want to say on the equity piece.
Yeah, it's huge.
It is huge, and you know, I haven't even touched on that, on the Interstate Bridge project.
Yeah.
We're one of the company that I work for, Spouse Strategies, the owner of our company, is the chief equity officer of this project. And I can't think of any other, mega project in the entire country that actually has a chief equity officer that's focused on equities. So there's a lot of equity investments in this project, but I didn't even talk about it because it's a whole giant box.
Oh, well, this
So,
class is about equity, so
yes.
it's important. So no, the IVR has a really big equity component.
so let me add something to that. Even in the way that this project is gonna be delivered. So there is the project is studying how to break, this is a $7 billion project, okay? Does that mean there's gonna be a $7 billion construction contract going to one company? No. There's gonna be 22, I think at least 22 different construction contracts going out to maximize opportunities for small companies, particularly targeting minority-owned construction companies, for them to get a shot at wealth generation that for decades and decades and decades, companies like that were never allowed to be a part of the mix. So that is a super huge part of the intent of the equity is wealth generation for people who don't normally get the opportunities to build wealth generation. And I just want to add one more final point on that. TriMet is like, almost holds the gold standard for helping do that.
We did really well on division transit with Ray Morgan. I was on that project. That was last week's conversation.
Raymore was too dumb for us when we hired them at the beginning.
Oh, I know,
And they
yeah.
managed the entire
Right.
project,
Yeah.
project.
Yeah.
So that was the largest contract in Oregon state history ever to go to minority contractor.
Yeah.
So that's an example of the wealth generation that IVR wants to do. Okay, sorry.
Take more questions. You have another 2 minutes.
So kind of a niche question, but you guys are both bicyclists. I know on a 100-degree day, biking over the Burnside Bridge, I didn't really want it's very exposed. Have you thought of shading it?
Yes.
Like that?
Yes.
Pedestrians also, biggest reason pedestrians don't walk is it's too hot in the sun.
Yeah, so pedestrian and active transportation comfort is a big part, exposure. That is a part of it, so those are details we haven't gotten into yet, but they have come up. Is that type of exposure and comfort and, you know, even just wind and rain. Like when I used to commute to Vancouver, sometimes riding to work or coming home from work and it's pouring, and not only pouring, then you have semis going by at 50 miles an hour, getting the spray and splash. Ugh, it's gross. So yeah, those are all factors.
I think the thing too is when you talk about the stack versus side by side, one of the arguments about the stack is if you put light rail and bike and ped on the lower deck, you would get some cover from rain and elements. But it puts a little bit of a difference in like you also don't quite have the views maybe quite as good as you would be. But
Especially if it prevents the particulate matter from getting at you as much.
yeah, I mean it's a
there's
Carbon monoxide poisoning your death for like 2 decades.
if the cars are on top and light rail and pedestrians are on the bottom.
Oh,
then-
sure, that's never gonna happen.
You're an optimist.
okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of heard hints of this, but what's the planned lifespan of bridge itself, and then what's kind of the tail of planning, let's say things like decades and decades, how much, I guess, how far into the future does the planning get? You have, is this a 100-year plan?
Okay,
And what's the tail on that?
so, yeah, so the infrastructure, I mean, we're thinking of it as what gets built will be around for 100 years. I mean, what's there now has been around for 100 years. So that's like, okay, the reinforced steel, concrete, and all that kind of stuff, it's gonna last for a really long time. Okay, that's one part of it. The other part of it is, when you're doing your traffic modeling, your traffic demand studies, are we planning 100 years out? We're planning 20 years out. 20 years is like the maximum future year that you model to. So 2045 is what we call the horizon year for all of the traffic modeling. We're trying to figure out how to size the facilities and the service to match the potential demand. It's what, talk about nerds, the computer nerds that work on the traffic modeling is what they're working towards. However, around this room, what's mobility gonna be in 20 years? It's gonna be different than it is now. So, there's gonna be a thing, it's gonna be built well, it's gonna withstand an earthquake. We know that. What the things moving across it, what they're gonna be, what kind of pollutant load it could or might not have. I mean, that's gonna change.
And so is there, there must be a certain kind of modularity built into this as well, because some things are gonna have to get done in 5 years or 15 years or 50 years.
Yeah, something when this bridge was built in 1906, it didn't plan to outlive a whole century, right? It really outlived this livability already at this point.
Built for horses and carriages.
And
You can imagine the land use around it, at that time. That was for the first bridge, and for the second bridge, it was post World War II, and capacity and massive growth, and baby growth, and all of that sort of stuff. So, it's hard to plan for that part. I think the modularity question about like what needs to be replaced as time goes on, and how do you do things? You have to replace light rail track, you have to resurface things. There's all those sort of maintenance things. I think the question, I think is one of the things that the administrator of this project brings up a lot is that this is a pretty built corridor. And so it's where we can build this project knowing kind of what we're constrained by and where people are going right now, knowing that the land use around it is what it is. Whereas when they built the first one, it was pretty much building in Vancouver was probably tiny and loggy, and Portland was probably, woods and animals and, things like that. It's, you kind of, they weren't expecting this. This where I think you have a little bit of that sense of what 100 years is gonna look like in this region.
However,
Who knows? Honestly.
it's an interesting point, because for instance, when I was working for City of Vancouver, I started working there in 2014, and the entire waterfront was a vacant industrial site. It was the Boise Cascade, pulp paper mill area. There was nothing there. There were some dilapidated buildings that were on the way being torn down. And so 2014, 10 years later, it is a spanking brand new neighborhood that is crushing. People love it.
Go down and have a drink down there. There's fun,
Yeah.
fun around, wild.
So to that point, what the program does when they do their modeling, they're also, when they do their projections for that future year, 2045, they're projecting the maximum build out of the city's comprehensive plan. So the city's comp plan plans for a certain amount of density by 2045. So they're building the facilities to handle that increased growth. So with that growth, what we know already is the owners of the Jansen Beach Supercenter, the Target, the Home Depot, the Boeing Pro Factory, all that kind of stuff. The owners of Jansen Beach Supercenter, they're based in New York. They own a lot of shopping centers all over the country. they like to do more progressive stuff in Jansen Beach Supercenter. So what we've heard from them already is they want to do transit-oriented development focused around the light rail station. So they're thinking of housing, much more walkable, bikeable station area, smaller scale, not giant footprint. So these things are going to evolve over time.
I think this may be a wrap. We can spend all night talking about this. But we're gonna have to end class.
International.